You already know who it is, King Fortune. We back in this bitch once again. Let's get to it. All right, we're going to go through this step by step. So don't worry about if you can see it or not. I'm going to definitely be explaining everything as we go through it. I just want to be able to manifest it right in front of your face. But let me turn this down a little bit. We already got the notes. What's up, Marvin and Magi? We already got the whole description here. I'm just going to break it down right in front of you. So the name of this video is, what is the necessary experience to born a king or a queen? Now, first and foremost, what is the difference between a king and a queen? So let's establish the foundation. So first and foremost, so let me put it a little closer so you can see it. We have king. We have queen. King breaks down to 5. Queen breaks down to 7. Right? We know 5 is Mercury, 7 is K2. Right? We know Mercury represents movement. We know K2 is being, you can say being God, right? It's like a stagnated position versus movement. They are the opposites. So for example, if we know anything about K2, we understand K2 is like the dojo. K2 is like walking into a church, you know, walking into a spiritual temple, so on and so forth, right? So a queen is like the oracle, right? So let's put this down here. Right? Now, the king is the power. So let's do this like this. So the difference between a king and a queen is a king and a queen. The king represents the power. The queen represents the beingness of divinity, being able to be divine. The king is the movement or the message of the divine. So the masculine and the feminine is like, you know, the womb of the universe, just being God, being divine. Okay, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about in the comment section. K2 equals Pluto. I have no idea where you got that from. You know, you didn't get that from me. So we're going to make sure we speak correctly here. So again, this is what I mean. I'm not sure where y'all be getting the information from, because I know I've never said that. Vedic astrology does not compare K2 to Pluto. They are two different energies completely. You know, but suit yourself. Let's continue. Now, first and foremost, why is the king the movement? And why is the queen the beingness of divinity? See, this is the thing. In order for a king to emerge from the darkness, so for example, if you are meant to be a king or you are meant to be a queen, there are certain things that you have to go through because you're going to be in charge of people, places, things, events, experiences. You know, you are the king or the queen of an entire village, an entire country, an entire state, or you could just be the king or the queen of your household, of your reality, and anything yourself. But what does it mean? Because, you know, these titles are thrown around haphazardly. We already know everybody's a king, everybody's a queen, right? It's just a good thing to say, but we're going to get down to the bottom of it. At the end of the day, it is the king who has developed the voice or the word of God. So let's write that down. So king, as we see, equals power. What is the power? The word of God. Right? So the emphasis is on the word. Because we know word is sound manifested. When we go to the queen, because we understand the queen, in order for a woman to be considered a queen, she has to be pure. She has to be purified, not by the water, but by the fire. What do I mean by that? The reason the king represents Mercury, we know that Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. That's why Mercury is known as the messenger of the word, or the messenger of God. We know K2 to be the dark side of the moon. So you got the light side of the moon, which is the number 2. Then you got the number 7, which is the dark side of the moon. The difference between the 2 and the 7 is the 2 is more so like a family-orientated vibe, a peaceful vibe, just pure feminine energy. But when we go into the darkness, when we go into the K2, we're getting the sense of a woman developing her, or a queen developing her psychic abilities. Right? So the queen has the psychic abilities. The king has the word of God. Right? So queens are psychic. The king has the power of the word because he has mastered the word of God. Why? Because he is the closest to the source. That's what Mercury is. Mercury is the closest to the source. Because K2 represents the dark side of the moon, it represents the psychic abilities. So a queen has access to the psychic abilities. The king has access to the word of God, being the closest to the source energy. Right? So here we go again. Someone is saying the high priestess. That's more so the energy of the moon. All right, you know what? I'll do it this way because I got the tarot deck right here. So let me clarify these things. Because again, everybody want to act like they know what they're talking about. All right. So let me break this down. Let me use the tarot because everybody, well, where you get your source? We about to get a source information right now. So let me pull out the card of the high priestess so y'all can see exactly what I'm talking about. So there is no confusion. Because again, the information can come from anywhere. But my purpose is to give clarification. It's not to further confuse people. So we see a bunch of contradictions happening in the comment section. So let's stop all that right now before we go forward. So give me 1 second to find the high priestess card. Here we go. Right? We see the high priestess represents the moon. You see, this is a symbol of the moon right here. Right? In this particular deck, she is called the priestess. Let me give you a closer look. So let's also show Mercury, which is the magus. So give me 1 second. Cause I'm gonna make sure y'all get this shit right. The magus, and here you see the emblem of Mercury at the bottom. I'll give you all a close up. As we see, the magus is juggling all 5 of the elements. Let us continue. So, now that we had defined what a queen is, which represents the ability to be psychic, the king having access to the word of God. So, how does a king get access to the word of God? What is the process a king must go through? For one, a king must possess truth, and he must be able to level that truth in all worlds. So let's write that down. All right? A king must be rooted in the truth, and that truth must stand in all worlds. To be the Lord of all worlds. Right? A king must be rooted in the truth, and that truth must stand in all worlds. To have the word of God, you can't be a liar. You can't tell fibs. You can't half-ass with the truth. You must be fully rooted in the truth, and that truth must be able to stand in all worlds. So that means it don't matter if you are in hell or if you are in heaven, if you are at the highest of the high or the lowest of the low, if you're just a regular street person or you're the master of your reality. Regardless of the degree you may be on in your personal experience, a king must be rooted in the truth. Well, how do you know what the truth is? Right? If we break down truth, it breaks down to the number 6, which is the number of Venus. Or it also represents equality. So let's put equality over here. What is equality? Equality, you can say, is the law, the physical law, because we know 4, 5, and 6 are the physical numbers. 6 is the manifestation of the physical law, the balance of the scales. We know Venus also rules over Libra and Taurus. Venus rules over Libra and Taurus. So that law is coming from Libra, and the physicality of it all is coming from Taurus, because Taurus is a fixed earth sign, and Taurus is all about beauty. Taurus is all about having mastery over the physical plane. You know, your possessions, your bank account, so on and so forth. You being able to navigate the physical plane in accordance with the law, right? You have to be able to navigate the physical plane in tune with the law. And again, this is what the truth represents. The physical law. You can say the physical law is Islam. I'm not speaking about the religion of Islam. Islam represents mathematics. Your ability to be mathematically proficient in everything that you do. That's what it means to move in accordance with the law. That's what it means to be rooted in the truth, meaning your mathematical proficiency transcends all, because you understand that the culture of the universe, you can say the universal laws, will project you to planes that you didn't even know existed. See, this is the thing. What keeps most people out of these planes of existence, what keeps most people away from the word of God, what keeps most people away from being able to connect with the spirit, is because they are not rooted in the truth, and they are not moving in accordance to that truth on a daily basis without exception. Not something you turn on and turn off. This must be your culture. Your culture must be rooted in the truth, and it must stand. So that means if someone is coming to you with the fuck shit, you know how to counteract it. You know how to give the counters, because you know exactly what it is. When you are rooted in the truth, you can detect all deception, because it is not in accordance with the truth. If you are the truth, then anything that is outside of that accordance, or outside of that reality, or that plane of thinking, will not resonate with you. You don't get distracted by the civilization that everyone else chooses to live. 85 to 90% of the population does not live in accordance with the truth, either because they don't know or they don't care because they don't see it as beneficial. While they're trying to get paid, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. And again, we live in a world where you don't have to be a person rooted in truth to pay your bills. So most people don't find a use for this. Why? Because it's not going to get you more money per se. Remember, the king or the queen is not necessarily the richest or the most wealthy, because the wealth is really for the entirety of their people. So even if they have access to like $10 million, they don't have it in their own personal bank account. They invest their money into their people, and the people invest their time, energy, and consciousness to that king or that queen. So let's break down what the queen is. Because we know the queen having access to her psychic abilities, telepathy, being able to communicate without having to literally leave the throne. See, this is the power of the queen. The queen can send out signals and messages to whoever she wants to send it out to without ever having to leave her throne, if that's what she wants to do. A great book to read, if y'all have not already read it, is the Autobiography of a Yogi, specifically chapter 3, when he speaks about when he met his guru, and his guru never left his eyesight, but things were happening miraculously around him and he could not explain it. It's all documented there. So again, because we know the queen breaks down to the number 7, the energy of K2, the most pure of the pure. The number 7 is the most pure number. This is why number 7 is the number of God or the goddess, right? Because it is a state of being. You have to be God. You have to be the goddess. It's not something that you speak. Remember, this is the difference between the king and the queen. The queen doesn't really have to speak. This is also why you see, if we look at the priestess, she's not speaking whatsoever. Her mouth is closed. She is just seated on the throne, spreading her hands or her psychic abilities. So you see, she doesn't have to ever leave the throne. She manifests, as you see here, the manifestations are coming from that musical instrument that is on her lap, which can also be a weapon. It's an instrument as well as a weapon, like an archer, a bow and arrow, you can say, but it's also an instrument. So all she is doing is utilizing her psychic ability to materialize the riches of the world. When we go back to the king or the energy of Mercury, you see he's more active. You see, if you emphasize his feet, we know that this is the energy of Hermes. We know Hermes has the ability to move at an accelerated rate. That's why you see an emphasis on his feet. So whenever you think about the god Hermes, he's able to run quicker than everyone else. It's just like the energy of Mercury, because Mercury, I believe, makes his full cycle around the sun in about 89 days. The earth takes 365 days. So Mercury then, did 3 rotations before the earth does 1, and, possibly more. We don't have to do the math right now. But what allows the magician, or what allows a magus to move as quickly as he does, is because he has mastery over all 5 of the elements, which start within. He has mastered self. This is why the magus is between K2 and Binah. But let's write that down, right? So let me give you another page. So when we look at Mercury, or when we look at the magus, he is the path between K2 and Binah. So let me write that down for those who may not understand. Keter and Binah, right? We know that Keter is the crown. Binah is understanding. So the magus is a path between these. The magus is a path between the crown in the understanding of the crown. See, what is the crown? The crown is the purity where the masculine and the feminine energies have merged together before they separate. Because the further we go down the tree of life, the energies start to separate. So when we go up the tree of life, the energies start to merge back together. So Kether, which is the highest spear on the tree of life, you have two paths, right? So let me actually demonstrate that for those who don't know. So you have this, this, and this, right? So you can, like, it's a triangle, right? So the top, this is Kether. This is Chokmah. This is Binah. This is the masculine. This is the feminine. The path between Kether and Chokmah is the fool. The path between Binah and Kether is the magus. So this is why Mercury is the messenger of the all, because again, this is the path right here. This is the magus. This is the fool, right? So those are the two paths that lead to the all. So the word of God comes from Kether communicating with Binah. You can say Binah represents the womb of the universe, right? Chokmah is the masculinity or the projection, or you can say the hidden father of the universe. This is why when you see depictions such as the Madonna and child, you don't see the father, you see the Madonna and you see the child. The father is the unseen principle. As they say, the father and the son are one, but you don't see the father. The father represents the universal plane, or the plane of existence that cannot be perceived. As above, so below. So although we can perceive men and women, you don't necessarily perceive masculine and feminine. Those are more so concepts. So taking a step forward, now that we understand the king being the word of God, having the word of God, being rooted in the truth, the queen has access to her full psychic abilities to the point where she doesn't even have to leave the throne. She can communicate through the ethers, through the quantum plane. But once again, how does a person develop these attributes? If we remember the movie 300, for those who have seen it, if you haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure you can find it anywhere online. It's not going to be hard. We understand that the king, he was born in Sparta, right? And he left. He was subjected to the wild. I believe he was 7 years old, right? The king was 7 years old, and his people threw him out into the wild because he was the chosen king. But he had to prove himself. So at 7 years old, they threw him out into the wild. And he had to master the 5 elements. Once again, here we go. So he had to go out into the wild and master the 5 elements on his own by himself. They trained him as a warrior, then they put him out into the world. So he had to gain mastery over the 5 elements. Another name for the magus or the magician is also called the juggler. Right? He had to learn how to juggle all of the elemental forces, not only outside of himself, but also inside of himself. He had to learn mastery over these elemental forces. That allowed him to slay the beast. So once he returned home at about 14, he was about 14 when he returned home, and everyone bowed to the king because he had proven himself. He had fulfilled the prophecy. He had fulfilled the word of God. We also notice that if you study the movie deeply, the king was in tune with the quantum world. We don't have to go into detail, but what I mean is when all of the other soldiers, for example, one example would be when the soldiers thought that it was an earthquake, he corrected them. He like, no, it's not an earthquake. Take your battle stations. It is time for war. The enemy is approaching. So the average person or all of the soldiers were thinking that they were experiencing an earthquake, but he knew exactly what it was. Why? Because he had mastery over the 5 elements. So there is no mysteries. He is connected with the source. He knew exactly what it was when it was happening. We also know when you watch the movie, he had his queen. He didn't do anything without consulting the queen. And the queen was more of a warrior than he was, because we know in order for the feminine to become the queen, she has to have mastery over the masculine principle. So she was more of a warrior than the king was. That's why he consulted her before he did anything, because she was his opposite and he was her opposite. So although the king was highly masculine, he had been in tune with the feminine nature of the quantum world. And although the queen is super feminine, she was a warrior spirit at heart. As we call in today's times, having mastery over the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because we know you have to be both. So as a man, you have to master your femininity. As a woman, you have to master your masculinity, because that's what gives you the ability to even sit on the throne. You have to have mastery over the masculinity to even take the throne. And this is why we see with the king, he had to have mastery over the 5 elements or the quantum reality. He had to go to the deepest chambers of himself in order to just survive. See, that would be barbaric if someone threw their 7-year-old child into the wild, or let's just say the streets. Someone tells, okay, you're 7 years old, you're an adult now. You figure it out and you return 7 years from now if you are still alive, and you will be granted kingship. That will be barbaric in today's times. But this is also why we don't see these type of people being created, because everyone has become soft. We have become afraid to do what is necessary to create divine beings. You don't create a divine being by doing regular things that everyone else is doing. Most people are not doing anything special. Most people are not going to the extremes to make sure that a king is produced from the womb, or a queen is produced from the womb, because it is something that has to happen from birth. It is a divine calling. But if that divine calling isn't nurtured because the people don't understand that divine calling, then we alter the destiny of the people. However, if you are chosen to be the king or the queen, it's going to be something within you that does not allow you to walk a normal path, because it's just your DNA is different. You want the challenge. You want the hardship. You want to have mastery over the 5 elements, because you can care less about doing what everyone else is doing, because it doesn't do anything for you. You felt like you have already been here. You have already achieved and mastered these things. So you are not motivated by what everyone else is motivated. Because again, most people are motivated by gold. Most people are motivated by money. The queen and the king are not motivated by the monetary gains, because you can say they already have that within them. They have more gold, they have more wealth than you can ever imagine within the DNA codes, but it must be activated. It's not enough to have it within, it has to be activated. If it is not activated, then you fall victim to the culture that we can call, you can say, the culture of illusion, where, as they say, you know, you wave the carrot in front of the rabbit, then you always going to have someone chasing. So it's not a carrot. You can say it's a dollar bill in this reality. You just wave a dollar bill, then most people would try to get it, just like a fish biting on the bait. Most people are easily controlled by monetary gain because they have lost the knowledge of themselves. When you have lost the knowledge of yourself, then you are easily led in the wrong direction, and it's hard to lead you in the right direction because you're not centered in the truth. How are you able to be centered in the truth? You have to have mastery over all 5 elements. But the only way for you to master the 5 elements, you have to do that outside of the cycles of time and space in terms of how we have been brought up to live. There's really no place or no person, no event. There's nowhere to go to really do these things in today's times because, again, most people will not agree. Most people are not putting their kids in those type of situations. Everybody wants to be soft. So there's really no place to go to cultivate these things. So it has to come within. It must be activated from within. So at the end of the day, this is also why we see there's a lot of women who are becoming more masculine, but it's at the expense of their feminine principle, as well as we see a lot of men becoming more feminine at the sacrifice of their masculinity. So we see how this has been turned around. You are not supposed to sacrifice one in favor of the other. They have to be merged together because we are naturally androgynous beings. The Magus is an androgynous being, just like the Fool is an androgynous being. But let me show you that, because here we go right here. Remember, these are the 2 paths to Kether, right? This is the Fool, the path of Kether and Chokmah. The Magus, the path of Binah and Chokmah. Or not Chokmah, excuse me, Kether and Binah. These are 2 androgynous beings. You see the difference? See, Binah is the feminine. This is the masculine. This is why this card is more active. You see it's more colorful here. It's more masculine. And you see this is more feminine. He's like in a divine womb. It's darkness. He's like walking in between dimensions and universes. This is what, women do naturally. They are always in between universes. As we see the Fool, you see he's been bitten on the leg by a tiger. You see an alligator here. He is subjecting himself into dangerous situations, but he is unaffected. As you see, let me give you a close look here. The Fool, you see he's been bitten by the leg. It's an alligator right here. It's all type of symbolism, but you see the face. He's unaffected by the natural occurrences of reality. He's unaffected. You also see he has horns, right? But even more, you see there's a sun at his genital area. You also see there's an emphasis at the heart area, and there's an emphasis on the crown. So you have the root, the heart, and the crown. So let's write that down because those are the special points. So you have the crown, the heart, and the root. We understand the root is sex. The heart is the judge, the divine judge. And of course, the crown is purity or pure light. Right? These are the phases that the Fool goes through. So this is why you see the sun at the genital area, mastery over the sex. Not just the gender, but also being able to have mastery over the, you can say, phallus. Mastery over the phallus. Why? Because the Fool, just like children, they're not really thinking about sex. So because they're not thinking about sex, their energy just naturally rises up to the heart center, which is why they're pure. Children are just very loving beings, especially between the ages of 1 and 8 or 0 to 8. They're just pure. Children don't start getting corrupt pretty much after the age of 8, because they've been around fuck shit. They've been around parents who didn't know what the fuck to do, so on and so forth. This is America, so we know how the shit goes, right? The corruption happens inside of the household. It's not really the world, it's inside of the household because, again, we have parents that don't understand these things, so how can they help cultivate it? So it has to come from the heart area. It has to come from within. This is why you see the same thing you see here, right? It's the same thing. Let me give you a closer look. You see, look at the crown. He has the 2 serpents coming together at his crown. But you see the same thing here, but it's at the heart area. So this is here. See, that's why Mercury represents the intellect, right? Wits, right? The juggler, the magician. This is all the wits, the left brain. But the fool represents that same intelligence that's coming from the brain of the magus is coming from the heart of the fool. The fool is led by the heart. The magus is led by the intellect or the intelligence. So I'm not speaking about education. I'm talking about intelligence. How do you gain natural intelligence? By having mastery over all 5 elements. That's natural intelligence. I'm not talking about going to a school. I'm not talking about going to a university. I'm talking about having natural mastery over the elements. So that's why he is crowned with the serpents versus the fool who is led by the intelligence of the heart. And we know the intelligence of the heart is more supreme than the intelligence of the brain. But you see, he also has the devil horns because he is not guided by the societal norms. See, the magus has transcended societal norms by mastery over the 5 elements. The fool has gone against the societal norms because they are led by the heart. Because they are led by the heart, they will be deemed demonic or devilish or, otherworldly, so on and so forth. Again, how is he being bitten on the leg? There's an alligator there. He is amongst all type of danger. You also see he is holding fire as well as ice. Right? How is he wielding fire in his hands? See, the difference between the magus and the fool is just led by the heart. So he's led to do what the heart is guiding him to do. So if his heart is guiding him to wield fire, then he's going to wield fire. And again, these are androgynous beings. So when I say he, it can also be her. The magus has the same concept, but it's coming from a more intellectual perspective by having natural mastery over the 5 elements. So again, we're going almost 40 minutes here. I just want to give you all a brief introduction of what does it mean or the necessary experience to manifest a king and queen in today's time. So that will be the last point here before we get out. So at the end of the day, this is going beyond having access to information. This is going beyond having access to a certain book. This is going beyond having access to a certain person. This is activating what is already within us. But in order to activate it, you must subject yourself to the most hardship that a person can bear and survive it. Again, the fool does that naturally being led by the heart. The magus is doing it with the intellect. Again, you see him walking this thin veil between these dimensions. Most people are afraid to navigate the underworld, as we already speak about, the halls of Amenti. Most people would never explore these paths, but the magus or the magician has no fear because they have mastery over the 5 elements. So they walk that thin line, but they maintain their balance. You see, he is a balanced being. She is a balanced being. So they're able to just do things that most people cannot do. Why? Because most people are not balanced. My thing is this. Ask anybody you know to stand still. Ask anybody to just stand still. They will start to wobble. Do it right the fuck now. Ask anybody to stand still and don't move. They can't do it because they're not balanced. The only person that's able to stand perfectly still is a person that is balanced. So if you can't even stand still without wobbling, you're not balanced. So that's the thing that must be corrected. Also, if you have any fear in your heart, you're not in tune with the intelligence of the heart because the heart has no fear. The heart should be able to guide you to places that you normally wouldn't go, to do things that you normally wouldn't do. So once again, what is the necessary experience to born a king or a queen? The queen representing the psychic abilities. The king representing the word of God. A king must be rooted in the truth, and that truth must stand in all worlds. A queen, having access to the psychic ability, doesn't ever have to leave the throne because she understands how to manifest from a quantum level. She is manifesting all the things that she needs by playing her song while on the throne. The divine masculine must be merged with the divine feminine, not at the sacrifice. And again, we know what's going on in today's times because, again, we have a lot of women who are giving up their feminine principle in order to be more masculine. We have men giving up their masculinity to become more feminine. So we see where the imbalance comes from. So merge the divine masculine and the divine feminine within you. Be the high priestess, be the